Hello, YouTube. This is just another guy talking about stuff, also known as Referee Vinny Lax. I'm here with Referee Jarrod Fritz from PWX, NWA, WrestleForce, and OSCW. And I thought that was a pretty cool name, Jared. Tell me what that last one stands for.
Old School Championship Wrestling.
That's a pretty cool
Carolina.
name for a promotion. I like it. So how you been, man?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Hanging in there. Coming outside of the good side of the pandemic, seems like.
Yes. It seems like it's getting much more streamlined and a lot easier for a lot of people. So that's a good thing. Sure.
Have you been able to keep yourself busy during this time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because I do so many things. I've got so many different irons in the fire. There's always something for me to be productive with. And I'll be very honest, just like everybody, the first 2 or 3 weeks that we were kind of questionable about everything, I didn't do a damn thing. I laid around the house, did the whole Netflix thing, watched a lot of movies, caught up on a lot of TV shows. And then after that, I just had to put myself in full gear. Because
I don't know about you. That feels like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
It does. It feels like so long ago. And there's a part of me that feels semi-guilty about it. But then there's a part of me that feels like the universe in one weird way or another tells all of us, hey, slow down, appreciate life a little bit and keep going.
Yeah, it's just a shame that we had to go through a lot of tragedy.
Unfortunately,
but yeah, for a lot of us, it is a good time to just kind of reflect on our path in life, what we're doing, where we're going. So I totally get on board with that. So let's talk about some wrestling.
Sure.
When did you fall in love with the quote unquote sport?
So it's kind of a funny story because my mom didn't want me watching it because she thought I was going to break my neck. So she was very anti wrestling, and she didn't like hate it. She didn't think that it was disgusting or like this abomination or whatever. She was just overly protective of her baby boy, So every once in a while I'd go over to my uncle's house and he'd watch the old NWA, and he was a huge Dusty Rhodes fan. And then, so I would try to sneak in my bedroom, turn on the TV because someone told me that, hey, there's wrestling on this channel. Well, all I knew before that was NWA because that's all my uncle would watch. Well, then WWF shows up and there's this big muscle dude with tassels and face paint and holy crap, it's the Ultimate Warrior. I'm like, what the hell is this going on my TV right now? And, I was hooked after that. I mean, I always loved the old school wrestling, but that character just alone by itself was kind of the hook that brought me in. And then when Papa Shango came on the scene, I was like, all right, I'm completely invested because I was a huge comic book fan growing up. And it was just kind of like, ooh, wrestling, comic books. Like this was the blend.
Yeah. I don't have that background because, where I am in New York, we basically only got WWF back then.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really even exposed to WCW until, it was on Nitro.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing. We were very lucky down here, and it took me till I was about 38, 39 years old to realize how lucky we were down in this area, because I hear stories like I've heard your interviews before and like, oh man, that kind of sucks that people didn't have it up there because we had just such a huge variety to choose from, even back before YouTube and all that.
Yeah, you had those flavors, right? Because WWF, it was always known for its characters. The wrestling is kind of gets a rep for not being as technical as NWA was back in the day. It was a little more just big guys muscling around, land of the giants, as they called it. The different perspective always kind of like just makes you think a little bit differently, because like I said, I was always into the characters, and that's kind of like what I loved about wrestling growing up was just these crazy characters that could do anything, or like basically like superheroes, right?
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree with that one.
So what made you decide to become a referee?
So that's a very interesting story. I never really pictured myself growing up being a part of wrestling. I just was a fan of it. And
I can relate to that,
yeah. And for those who've never even seen any of my social medias before, but my main job is I'm a licensed massage therapist. And I've worked with US Soccer on and off since 2004. And I was lucky enough to go to the 2008 Olympics with the women's national soccer team. And
that must have been a trip.
Oh, dude, it was intense for sure.
I mean, I'm sure I'm sure everyone who's listening hopefully knows by now. I'm an athletic trainer. So we, have a little bit of a medical background.
Right. Great minds,
Yeah. Oh my
but,
God, to travel the Olympics. That's like a,
oh, it was probably one of the greatest things that ever happened in my life. But the doctor that was working with the team signed a contract with WWE to work as a doctor for them like a week before he left. So his last stint with US Soccer was the Olympics, and then he moved into WWE. And he knew that I was a fan, and he said, basically, if you want to be a massage therapist, anytime we're in the area and I can get you booked on, I'll bring you in as a massage therapist. So I was lucky enough to do about 2 or 3 different shows with WWE. So that was cool. Then WWE decided to go a different way with massage. And I really kind of wanted to figure out, hey, how can I stay involved with wrestling as a massage therapist? And at the time, my mentor with massage therapy was living in Tampa, and I knew that was where FCW was. And I said, do you have any hookups there? He said, no, but a guy I used to teach is a professional wrestler in Charleston. Here's his contact him. I did so. He's like, oh, you should come out to the local indie shows. I'm like, what the hell is an indie show? Like, right. I have no idea, right? So I went out, watched a couple of shows, and then approached the promoters, and I said, hey, I'd love to, quote, sponsor your event by providing free massage therapy to all your athletes. And they jumped right on board. And within about 2 shows of me working with them, they wanted to run an angle with the guy who introduced me to them as kind of like a friend that would run in. But in the state of South Carolina, in order to be inside the barricade, you have to be licensed. So you have to get trained and you have to get licensed. So they negotiated a deal where I got trained just enough. And while I was there, the trainer was like, hey, you ever thought about being a referee? And I was like, no. To be honest with you, yeah, I thought about
you don't really think about it, do you? You don't even know where the referees come from. They're like
exactly
guys that show up, but yeah.
So he said, we don't have a good variety of referees in the area. So if you'd like to be a part of this, we can maybe train you as a referee. I pursued it. I enjoyed it. And he was like, well, you got the athleticism. You ever thought about wrestling? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. So I did that. And, I got a late start. I didn't start till I was 32. So I pulled the DDP on this one. And wrestled and refereed simultaneously for about 1.5 years. And then I separated my shoulder. And when that happened, I decided to put all my chips in on refereeing, just because I felt like I added more value as a referee than I did as a wrestler. Like, there's so many wrestlers out there that are way more talented than I am. Let them do that and let me do the refereeing, because it was making a difference in the area. And that's just what I wanted to do.
Cool. And for those who don't know, where are you based out of?
I'm based right outside of Charleston, South Carolina, a little town called Ladson.
Is that where you grew up, or?
Sort of ish. I was born in West Palm Beach, Florida. My mom remarried. We moved up to this area when I was about 5 years old. Lived here till I was 13. We moved overseas to Japan for 3 years and then came back. And I've been here pretty much ever since. And then me and my wife are hopefully in the next 3 to 5 years pursuing a move to Tennessee, the mountains of Tennessee, buying a little farm up there.
Got the plan. All right. Sounds great. So we touched a little bit on training. So what was your experience? Well, first of all, who trained you, and what was your experience with training, as a referee, and then kind of transitioning into wrestling, and then kind of focusing on being a referee? How would you say that experience panned out?
The experience was great, and it was exactly the opposite of what I thought it was going to be. Because if you grew up and you read the Ric Flair biography, and you heard Al Snow's interviews about how they were brought into the business, like you literally thought you were going to get your ass handed to you, in a way. And
that might have been 50 years ago, yeah.
Right?
That might have been that was 50 years ago, yes. But
so I was a bit anxious, and what was interesting is they hooked me up with a ride, because where I train at is about 1.5 hours drive from where I'm at, and to save money, we carpool and everything. And the 2 guys that picked me up were in better shape than I was. So I was like, ooh, okay. Not sure what's going to go on here, but got there. And the fabulous Playboy Bob Keller is the guy who trained me, with the assistance of John Schuyler, who, if anybody's familiar with AEW right now, John Schuyler is making a big splash there. So I get there, and the first thing they have you do is run the ropes. Well,
Yep.
That's probably the most deceiving thing that I ever realized about wrestling was running the ropes. Didn't realize that it's steel cable wrapped in tape and you got to hit it as hard as you can. So my back was upset for about 2 weeks, but you get used to it. But also Bob's very, very big on psychology. And so, you'd hit the ropes, you'd do a couple of rolls here or there, and then you would just talk about why you do certain things in the ring, and the whole entire time for like the first couple of weeks that I'm there, I'm like, hey, when do I get to do the hurricanranas? Like, when do I get to do that kind of stuff, because that's kind of the interpretation that you get from it, but you don't realize how much the fundamentals play such a huge role in it. And, I'm super thankful to him for that now, because it makes so much more sense now. And granted, I can't go out there and do all these big moves or anything like that, but I can tell the story with what I'm doing. And so I'm very thankful for that. And like I said, now spending some time refereeing, spending some time wrestling, I feel like I have a more complete grasp of everything. And I really feel like any referee out there should train to be a wrestler and even have a couple of matches under their belt, just so they can understand what to expect and what to visually see, so that they can better know, hey, that went down right, that didn't go down right.
Yeah, I myself never had an actual match other than maybe some battle royals, and but I worked as a referee. But yeah, even when I trained, I always say you should train as a wrestler. It gets you in the kind of mindset of not only how matches are put together and the formula that you follow, but just knowing what it's like and knowing like positioning and stuff like that, where the wrestlers are going to be, helps you so much more as a referee.
It does. And positioning is huge, particularly when you're in an area or in a venue or in a predicament. Like with NWA, we have the hard cam, we have the pedestal cameras, and we have 2 traveling cameras. So we're very limited in the space that we can move. So you just have to be able to anticipate what's going to be happening next and be out of the way in a very small space.
Or you get yelled at by the video editor saying that your ass is right. The entire time.
Once or twice.
So tell me about your first experience on a wrestling show. Maybe not so much the ones that you went to, obviously, as a massage therapist, but your first time booked as were you booked as a wrestler or as a referee your first
referee? First time was a referee, and it was through WrestleForce, which is Bob's company that he promotes. And at the time, John Schuyler was doing a lot of the booking for everything. And, it's kind of one of those things, Bob's guys gets pulled in through there just so they can get a little bit of experience and everything. And it was a crazy roster, man. Like, if you look at some of the names that were on that roster at that time, Cedric Alexander, Caleb Connolly, Anthony Henry, who's now Asher Hale in NXT, John Schuyler, some pretty big names that were on my very first show. But I remember my very first match was Josh Powers and Zane Riley. It was a comedy match. And they come back to give me the finish, and they're like, we got a spot for you. And I'm like, what do you mean you have a spot for me? Like, I'm supposed to count and that's it. They're like, no. You're going to do, this whole
first
gimmick.
Match. We're going to give the ref a spot. Here you go. Throw you in the fire, kid.
But it went off without a hitch. Honestly, it was more mind-blowing to me that I didn't screw it up. I didn't botch it. I didn't throw anybody under the bus or anything. But it gave me a lot of confidence, because Zane is one of the people that he's straight up with you. If you're the shits, he's going to tell you the shits, Yeah. But he was like, you did a great job. You were right in the position, and that just kind of capitulated the confidence, show after show after show from there.
Yeah, it's hard to explain that feeling when something like that you work on, you talk about, just like clicks so perfectly. Then, especially being the first time, like, and you get the crowd reaction out of it, and it's just like, even as a referee, because you're really not thinking as a ref that you're going to get like crowd reactions or anything like that. So.
No, not at all.
So it is that kind of like it's hard to explain for me. I don't really know exactly how to explain it, but it's great. So if you can go back to that time, all right, and give yourself a bit of advice, what do you think you'd give yourself?
Believe in yourself a little bit more, because I grew up, I had an older brother who was kind of tough on me. And he was somewhat of a perfectionist. And I always something I battled with for years is just always being not necessarily perfect, but, not letting people down. And so I'd always have that trepidation going into every single match. Like, oh, what could go wrong, and it's just like, that's the worst way to think about going in there. It's like, don't think about what could go wrong, think about all the things that can go right.
Because then you'll find something to go wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, if you're searching for it, you're going to find it. Right. And I would say probably the first year I was very much like that, like, oh man, I'm going to screw this up, or particularly like the first couple of times that I got to work with big names, particularly, never was a big, huge mark or anything like that. But, I think the very,
I mean, those, yeah, I get it. Like the people, the names, it's even a weird thing to say sometimes, isn't it?
Right.
But they're so seasoned and veteran, and they've been on television and they've been in other countries and they've been doing this as a career for how long. You do get a little bit of intimidation. Like they know I'm a nobody down here and wherever. I better not screw this up. I'm gonna look like crap. I think is that what you're trying to get at?
Yeah, because the very first quote name that I ever worked with was Gangrel. And anybody who knows Gangrel knows that he is like the most humble, the nicest guy you'll ever work with, super laid back. But growing up, when I was a big fan of the Attitude Era, like I was a huge Gangrel, the Brood fan. Like I loved the whole vampire gimmick. My mom was really big into the Anne Rice books and Vampire Lestat and all that. Like, so I was a huge, huge fan. And that was the first name I got to work with. And I'm like, oh shit, like, boy, expectations are high, right?
Oh, lost you for a second.
No, sorry about that.
I'll have to try and edit that out. So you worked with Gangrel the first time, and your first big name. You're a big fan growing up. I'm just recapping. We cut out for a little bit there, so I don't know how this is going to play out in the edit, but that's what we're here for. Live and learn. So yeah, that's great advice. Because and this has been a thing for me as a referee, because I like you knew I'd be a way better referee than a referee. I'm sorry, than a wrestler, obviously. But because I don't ever see myself as like the star, right? I'm always someone who likes to play a supporting role in these kind of things. So how do you kind of reconcile, also being a referee, but also trying to like promote yourself? Because it's something that you need to do to get booked. And it's something I think I've always struggled with, and I think a lot of other referees struggle with, because you don't, like we're always told, don't be seen. Right? So, but how do you also get yourself noticed by not being seen?
Well, Sue, I'll tell you this much. I own my own businesses, so I'm very used to marketing myself and doing those type of things. And in that realm of, I kind of stay away from the archaic feeling or idea of we can't be seen at all, because you have to be seen, right? You can start a match without a referee, but you can't finish a match, right? So therefore, a referee is very, very valuable. And with that being said, it's what value do you add to a show, or what value do you add to a match? And for me, it's little tiny things like, I can bring a massage chair with me and I can work on the boys in the back. I don't charge for it. If they want to give me gratuity, that's great. I'm CPR certified. These are all things that can add value to your show. That isn't even just a referee, but oh, here, by the way, this is what I do as a referee. And I'm the type of referee, like I said, I don't think that we should be unseen, but we also shouldn't take away from the match just the same. So I like to, the way it was put to me in like the very first couple of matches that I was part of, is the people out there know kayfabe's dead, right? The people out there know that it's a work, but your responsibility, where you're the referee, the wrestler, the promoter, whatever, is to make them question that idea. So how do we bring an element of realism to what's happening in there? So for me as a referee, I bring urgency to the match. Those are the things that I like to do. I like to check on everybody when they take a move, for two reasons. They could get hurt. When I separated my shoulder, it was the slightest little move just the wrong way, right? So you got to check on them consistently, right? And it's also a perfect opportunity. If you got to relay any type of information to them, you can do it. And it doesn't look like, oh, he didn't go and talk to him all this time and now he's going to talk to him, right? Like I'm checking him all the time, and that's why a lot of people ask me in the interviews, what type of matches you like to do? I like to do the unsanctioned street fight, that type of thing. And they're like, why? You don't have any rules? Because I can make it look a lot more intense, you know, tap their cheek, look at their eyes. Hey, can you hear me? You know, oh my God, look to the crowd, you know, look to the curtain, whatever. We might need to pull somebody, you know, those type of things that make people go, oh, this might be a little bit more serious than I thought this was.
Right. It's about being seen at the right time. I think
yes, exactly.
Is a great way to put it.
Perfect way to put it.
So, yeah, I mean, we touched on this a little bit, but what would you say is the most rewarding thing about being a referee for you?
How to get put the other day, the most unrewarding job on the card is being the referee sometimes, because sometimes you have to referee the whole entire match. And like I said, you know, you can start a match without a referee, but you can't end a match without a referee, right? So there is a valuable point to bringing what you have to each match, you know. And I love getting, and this isn't like an arrogant type of thing, but I love seeing the accolades or the tweets that are like, you know, he did that one thing. Like after the last Shadows Fall, the pay-per-view that I did with NWA, there was this tweet that the guy was like, you know, I really like little gestures. Jarrod sweeps his hand under the shoulders to see if it's an actual pin. You know, little things that you just don't think about, but can add that much more value. Like, so I like hearing those things or seeing those things to go, ooh, I'm going to keep that in my tool belt, because clearly it's making an impact on that, you know. And of course, anytime I get the opportunity to share information or share knowledge with the up and coming referees to help them out just the same, that really is super rewarding. I've always been a big teacher, coach, that type of thing. I love doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it also kind of, you know, does validate you a little bit. You know, it's like, oh man, people are actually listening to me. They know, you know, so I must know what I'm talking about a little bit at least.
A little bit.
I totally get that. That being said, then what would you say is the most challenging aspect of being a
you know, honestly, I think going back to the previous thing we talked about, is sometimes the most difficult thing is that confidence, getting in that headspace to understand. Because as much as I don't like to know what goes on in a match, because I like to be just as shocked as everybody else, or, you know, just as surprised so that I can react naturally to it. I also kind of want to know, like, hey, when you do this, you know, you want this urgency there, so I need to know where exactly I want to be. And then, you know, you're grinding all those gears in your head as you're standing in the ring waiting for everybody to get there. Like, oh my God, please don't screw up, you know. So that's always the challenging part for me. But with that being said, you know, Brian Hebner told me, he's like, just do your job, you know, and if you have to take it back, you can take it back. If, you know, you get yelled at, but you learn and you go on, you know. That's about it.
That's a great advice right there. Because yeah, I mean, so many things can go wrong, and I'm sure as much as you referee and you want everything to always be perfect, sometimes things don't always go the way you want it to.
Nope.
Right. I'm sure we've all been there, and sometimes, you know, the wrestlers are expecting you to do something or be somewhere, and you're not there, and it might be something that they just decided to do, or it might be something that they called and you missed. But either way, you know, it's just mistakes are going to happen. So, you know, I always say is, you know, as long as nobody got hurt, you know, and, you know, we were able to recover.
Absolutely.
So, so what do you think the future looks like for you in the business?
That's a great question. As I said, I have a lot of irons in the fire. I own my own massage therapy business. I work with a health and wellness supplement company. I do the refereeing. Like I said earlier, me and my wife have ambitions in the next 3 to 5 years to move up to the mountains of Tennessee, have ourselves a little farm. She wants to do a food truck. I want to help her kind of pursue that. I want to kind of transfer my massage therapy business into a life coaching business. I've been doing massage therapy for 17 years, and it's taxing on the body. You know, I don't care how much I work out, how much I take care of myself physically, it's taxing on the body. As we've learned over the past 1.5 to 2 years, you know, Zoom calls, Skype, you know, might be the way to go, where you don't have to worry about losing business or anything. And I feel like with life coaching, I am able to reach and work with more people than I would be able to simply just do a massage therapy. With that being said, I do work with the American Massage Therapy Association. I teach the sports massage program certification. And so I'd like to do more teaching with them. Of course, I'd love to score a contract with NWA. Not on a contract basis with them right now, but they've got a lot of things going for them in the next couple of years, and I'd love to be on board for that ride and, spend a couple of years with them, rolling the dice and see what they got going on.
No, sounds like you have a lot of plans. Sounds good. It's always good to at least have plans, right?
Absolutely.
That way you have a direction. So that's great. Any other takeaways that you want the audience to know about you personally, about you in wrestling? Real quick, what was your experience like wrestling? Like, did you have a good amount of matches, or actually wrestling?
Yeah, I think I had about I had them all on my phone. Like I did that thing where you put all your matches on your phone and everything, and then my phone crapped out and completely died, so I lost it all.
That information.
Rookie mistake, rely on data way too much or technology way too much. But I want to say I had about 18 matches ish. Okay. And it was great. Like I had a fun time. I learned a lot in a very short period of time. In the area that I live in, like in South Carolina, we're considered the low country, and then there's the upper state. So it's kind of like divided on a diagonal. And so when I would go up into the upper state, I would work without a mask or without a hood, and I would just be my character, Chaz Valor. Down here, where people would recognize me, I would referee and work the same show underneath the hood. So that way I could, get a little double pay and get a little
roughing in, get a little wrestling in. Yep. Keeps you busy. It's nice to be busy backstage.
And I liked it. I enjoyed it. Honestly, I hate remembering a lot of crap,
I feel you there.
When they're calling everything, and it got to me, too much, where I just said, if as a referee, I can do what I'm really, really good at without having to remember a lot of things. You only have to remember a couple of things here and there. And so you can react a lot easier. The best match that I ever had, I got paired up against George South. And if anybody listening knows Southeast Wrestling, George South, Mr. Number One George South. And I was scared shitless, honestly, because it was at this big Mid-Atlantic Fan Fest, to do huge show. And I was actually there to referee, but they knew that I wrestled too. And they were like, hey, the guy who's going to wrestle George couldn't show up. Can you work him? I'm like, I guess, sure. I want to say it was only my 6th match or something. Like, it wasn't anything great. And we were the opening match of the show and everything. And he comes back, he goes, are you nervous? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, don't be. He goes, you're going to go over with the sunset flip and I'll meet you out there. Didn't call anything else, right? He's like, you're just going to go over the sunset flip when I tell you. You just listen. And I did. I went out there and listened to everything he said. He called everything in the ring. I absolutely loved it. It was the best thing in the world,
That's something that's a lost art, I think, is being able to call basically everything in the ring.
Yeah. And, it's something I tell, because I do get a lot of people that will ask me for input. And, I say, listen, I'm a very old school guy. I like storytelling. I like things to be reactionary to the crowd, and I understand in WWE and a lot of these other places, they have to sign off on the production and they have to say, this is what we're going to see out there, and nothing's going to change from this. And I'm just one of those people that I'm like, you got to listen to the crowd. The way it was labeled out to me is babyface gives the crowd everything they want. Heel takes it away. So if you're not listening to the crowd, you're not paying attention to what the crowd wants or what, whatever. How good is the story going to be for you? And
it's a tale as old as time, isn't it?
Right. Super simple.
Right. And that's basically keep it simple like that, and you'll be okay. That's always been my advice anyway. So yeah, anything else you want to tell the audience here? I appreciate you coming on.
No, man. I'm very passionate about helping anybody out wherever I can. So, I like to do a lot of positive motivation things on social media. If you've seen some of my stuff, or if anybody follows me on social media, they'll see, like, I always put something out every morning that's just a little bit of positive motivation advice, if you will, because I never had any issues, like, truly with, like, depression or whatever, but I got stuck in that rut that I think a lot of us particularly guys in like the mid to late 20s, early 30s, where you just feel like maybe you're just kind of stuck or whatever. But I always knew that I always had like, there was something else out there, right? And it wasn't until I started doing things like gratitude journals and personal development books and things like that to really open my mind up. So like I try to spice that out to people because life's difficult, you know, it's not always the easiest thing in the world to deal with. But
especially this past year. I mean,
yeah,
that's great advice for anyone struggling this past year. You know, get your mental health in order. I think it's something that a lot of people have overlooked for a long time, and I'm glad it's starting to get a little bit of a spotlight.
it is, and that's fantastic. You know, my wife, she suffers from a lot of mental disorders, and you know, I've learned a lot with her, which has also helped in my own capacity too. But you know, just kind of continually sharing that with people. You know, there's far too much negativity in the world, so like putting more negativity in the world is not going to help out in any way. But if we can put a little bit more positive every single day, even if it's just for yourself, you know, empowering yourself one word at a time, one day at a time, it makes a huge difference, you know, because we're all, I think it's safe to say that we're all capable of really, really, really amazing things. We just have to be able to unlock those things and move forward with it.
It's awesome stuff, man.
It's because I didn't think that I'd ever be in wrestling, but here I am.
Right? You grow up watching it, and you fall in love. I'll be
honest, man.
You're just like all you think you're ever going to be as a fan, and then all of a sudden, you're in the ring.
Yeah, you know, I'll be honest. I think it was 2000, the first time they ever did Tough Enough, and they were like, "Oh, we're doing an open call." You know, I was like, "Oh, really?" And then I realized, like, you got to pay for your own flight, you got to pay for training, you got to do all this other stuff. I was like, "Oh, there's no way." And at that time, I had just graduated high school and I was 127 pounds. You know, I'm like, yeah, there's no way.
I'm about 5'8", and you know, back in the early 2000s, the only guy I could probably look to was Rey Mysterio, and I wasn't doing those flips. So
yeah, exactly, and that's why like I kind of gave up hope on it. I was like, yeah, there's just no way. But of course, I didn't even know back then all that's out there, and that's the biggest thing is like we don't have to live life alone. Like there's a lot of people who have already done the things that we want to do, and it's okay to go out and ask them for questions, and whether you get the answers you want or the answers you don't want, at least you know, and if you never ask, you already know the answer, right?
Never be afraid to ask questions. That's
exactly.
That's great advice. So yeah, why don't you give us your socials, and then I got a little bit that I like to do at the end of the interview.
So I always like little bits at the end.
Yeah, 5 you know, just quick 5 questions. First thing that comes to your mind. But yeah, give your socials out.
Cool. So on TikTok and Instagram, it's Jarrod, Jarrod .Fritz, Fritz. On Facebook, it's Jarrod C. Fritz, LMT, licensed massage therapist. And on Twitter, it's the little @ symbol thing. I don't know what the actual terminology is, but it's J Fritz.
This is perfect.
J Fritz Ref Life. So you can find me there. If you have any questions, you want to learn a little bit more about anything, don't hesitate. I'm always an open book.
Hit him up. Definitely. He's got a lot of good advice on a lot of different topics. So don't be afraid. So yeah, thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
I appreciate it, my man.
No,
I love doing these things.
It's cool to finally get to talk to you other than, you know, messages on Facebook. So
right. One of these days we'll actually meet face to face, right?
Yeah, probably. You know, I'm sure Odie has a Zebra Talk convention planned at one of these days. We'll have to get on. If you guys haven't heard my other interview especially with Odie there, he started the Zebra Talk. That's how Jarrod and I kind of got hooked up. I think over the summer we were doing the Zebra Fit deal.
Zebra Sweat.
Zebra Sweat.
Yeah.
I already forgot the name. Talking about remembering things, but yeah. So again, thanks for coming on. And it's now time for the quick 5 questions. So 5 questions. First thing comes to your head, and I'm gonna sign off.
All righty.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Favorite pre-show meal?
Ooh, I would have to say it's really my wife's a at-home chef, so it's like whatever she makes for me on the road.
Okay.
I'm not picky.
Favorite television show?
Man, there's so many right now. I'm gonna have to go with Loki right now.
Loki's great right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Only 2 episodes in, but it's one of my favorite shows of the year, obviously so far. Your dream car?
Dream car.
Shows and what?
1967 Chevy Nova.
With a lot of 1967 Chevy Nova.
1967.
67. I was going to say.
Yeah. with a lot of paint jobs and, you know, like all fancy stuff.
Like the fire on the sign and stuff like that.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
There we go. We know that you want to live on a farm in Tennessee, but where would your dream vacation be?
I would have to say Ireland. The old castles and absolutely.
I went to Dublin for a few days. That was my extent of Ireland. So
hey, it's better
Dublin
than me
was
right
fun.
now.
Don't get me wrong, but I hear the countryside is very beautiful. And last but not least, or maybe least, who knows? Your favorite ice cream flavor?
That would have to be butter pecan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. Again, if you enjoyed the interview, please give the video a like, subscribe to my channel. Any thoughts or comments, don't be afraid to leave them in the comments. Until next time, witty sign off catchphrase.
Take care.